Hi, everyone. We're live with Spirit Drivers. I'm here with Sharna Fabiano, and we're hoping that Greg, my partner, is going to join us soon. We're so excited to have Sharna here. And if you don't know about Spirit Drivers yet, it's a masterclass, a 4-month masterclass where we are in a group together to uplift each other, to bring out the best versions of ourselves, and to truly live into our visions for the world. We started Spirit Drivers because we saw all the uncertainty, all of the doubt, all of the fear that was overcoming us through the pandemic, and also through the political struggles and the social struggles that have been going on in the US. And we wanted to offer something, a place for people to come who want to be intentional about how they live during this time and who want to take it as an opportunity. And through this series, we are bringing you experts in across a number of fields and people who are spirit driven, vision led, and help others to do the same. And these are people who have inspired us. Sharna has inspired me for years now. I love her work. I'm such a huge fan, and I'm really honored to have her on today. And so what we're going to do today, before I introduce Sharna, is Sharna's going to share 3 tips with you. She has 2 and a bonus tip for staying centered during stressful times. What we want to leave you with today is a sense of calm and relief, and to have some tools to use and apply for yourself in your life, and also to give you permission to take the time to use these tools. So Sharna also has a gift for you that she's going to share in the middle of the interview between tips 2 and 3. So be sure to stay so that you can take advantage of the gift and also learn the last tip that she's going to share. So without further ado, Sharna is a former tango dancer and choreographer, which is where I met her in the tango world. And she's turned a visual artist and life coach. She draws on her training in improvisation, mindfulness, and the creative process to help others clarify their goals, stay centered during stressful transitions like now, and create positive change. She's also the author of the forthcoming book, Lead and Follow, which demonstrates how principles of tango social dance can strengthen professional teams by aligning the skill sets of both leadership and followership, which is something that's so fascinating to me. So Sharna, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Elise. I love Spirit Drivers, the concept and what you're doing, and it's really a pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, we couldn't be more honored to have you. And so tell us your story. Tell us, first of all, how you became a coach and a visual artist as you are now. And also would love to know what your experience has been like during this pandemic time.
Sure. So I'll start the story kind of around where we met. I had a long, first career, as a tango artist, and I was immersed in, this world of community, improvisation, and creativity, and was very fortunate to get some really excellent training with longtime dancers in Buenos Aires, and I had a kind of combination of activities. I had local school in Washington, D.C., and I was traveling to give workshops, which is where I met Elise, and had the privilege to meet just hundreds of really engaged and curious people, and to experience this dance with them. It was a very rewarding part of my life. And as it happens, like at a certain point, I started feeling I needed something different, and I really wanted to focus on performance. And so I returned to graduate school, and I made the big move from DC to Los Angeles, where I live now, to do my master's degree in performance at UCLA. And what I didn't realize at the time was that those 3 years would not only sort of train me as a choreographer, director, but also put me into a deep reflective process on the values that movement both carries forward from generation to generation, and also what it creates in the moment. What we're really building in terms of our social beliefs and realities through our bodies. So this was super fascinating to me, and so as I finished that degree, I also did a yoga teaching certification because I wanted to continue this exploration of mindfulness and mind-body integration, and my as fate would have it, my yoga teacher was a coach. And so
Mm.
that was also my introduction into life coaching and the transformative technologies of that discipline. And so my teacher, Amy, she coached us through the yoga training. And then a year later, she offered her coach training, and I signed up for that. And
That was
during that
Amy
process,
Lombardo, right?
yes.
She has
Amy
beautiful work.
Lombardo, she's beautiful work. Her book is brilliant, so I recommend
Mm.
it to everyone.
Mm.
It's wonderful. Yeah, and I'm happy to send that resource out. So it was in that coach training that kind of a lot of these strands of my exploration were coming together. The dance, the movement, the mindfulness, the intentional um, living and integration of mind, body, emotion, nervous system. And I started to see the coaching relationship, and this might not surprise any of you because you're into this kind of stuff as a dance, right? And very much like my improvisational life,
Mhm.
that relationship with the other person was about creating together, right? Through question and answer, through close listening, through discovery, very much the way I had on the dance floor, except now we were creating on like the life canvas, right? Instead of the dance floor.
Yes.
And near the end of my coach training, I in one of my own sessions, I discovered I really wanted to paint and kind of reclaim this desire from my childhood, and so I became a painter, and it was just a private practice for me for over a year, and then I realized this was something I wanted to make part of my life. So that was another interesting development in my own coaching journey, which now I kind of wrap into a lot of my offerings. Creative practice along with coaching and inquiry and journaling. So yeah, that sort of, I think, is the short story. Brings me to where we are now.
It's such a beautiful flow. That's one of the
Mhm.
things that I so admire about you, is that you are very good at following the flow and not letting anything get in the way of you just following your passion. And you go deep into it, and then you offer it to people in a valuable way, in a clear way. And you're so articulate in the way that you speak about each of these disciplines and the way that you practice them. And yeah, I wish that for everyone watching also to follow, to truly be able to follow your passion and to be able to pivot and to be able to follow an interest and discover where it leads.
Me too. Me too. That's, I think, one thing I love about this kind of coaching work is that it really is a discovery and empowering of everyone to find their own flow. Right. It doesn't mean everyone's going to be a painter, or everyone's passion is different, and the constellation of what you do, with your work versus your private time versus your, family and community, those are all like kind of individual colors, in the palette to weave together. And it's just a really rewarding process of working with possibilities.
So well said, working with
Mhm.
possibilities. And especially now, because
Mhm.
people are so confronted by not being able to go to the office anymore,
Mhm.
potentially having lost a job, or maybe being faced with a new realization about, wow, I don't actually like what I'm doing anyway. That's what I've heard a lot of people realizing,
Indeed.
like all the distraction is gone and everything. People are
Mhm.
kind of realizing that, wow, this is what wasn't for me anyway. And to be able to go inside and, working with a coach is always a
Mhm.
wonderful thing to do at a moment like that where you're not sure which
Mhm.
step to take next, but to be able to go inside and to then follow, that, I think
Mhm.
that's a really centering practice.
Mhm. Absolutely. This is such a time of big questions, and it is so scary, right, in so many ways. And I don't want to sugarcoat it at all. Like, living an intentional life is not just like rainbows and puppy dogs all the time. It's pretty scary sometimes because you're
Yeah.
stepping off the path, right, all the time. I mean, it's very rewarding, right? But yeah, it's really a lesson in courage and in trusting yourself, right, and deepening
Mm.
that internal voice, right, which
Yes.
is so powerful. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, I want
absolutely.
to get to the tips,
Mhm,
but just to say one more thing about that,
mhm,
there's what I go through as a
mhm,
entrepreneur for the past few years has been my calling, and then just so much doubt,
yeah,
and the doubt says things like, yeah, but you just, go get a regular job. You
mhm,
can go back into the workforce, and then, but I have this
yeah,
passion and this calling that's calling me in another direction, it's different than anything else that I know anyone else is doing, and not having that sense of security that a job, even though it's, we're
mhm,
learning now that's really a false sense of security oftentimes, but it still is something that's grounding in some ways. And to be able to ground yourself
mhm.
in your own individual unique calling is what we're talking about.
So well stated. I'm right there with you, Elise. It's a brave path, right? And in some ways, those voices of doubt never really disappear, right? You just learn to make friends with them,
Yeah.
right? And accept, okay, this is the culture I'm in. This is the history that we have, and so it's normal that I'm going to have these little survival kicks one way, one moment from one moment to the next.
Mhm.
And yeah, you just open a dialogue with them, and over time, I think it becomes more familiar, right? Those voices of doubt or hesitation, and so that's the dance, right? Sort of the navigation between um, what you need to survive, right? Because we all need to eat and pay rent, and that needs to be taken care of,
Yes.
and also at the same time, right? So it's not one or the other. It's yes, we tend to our practical survival needs, and we embrace the higher calling, the deeper knowing, and we continue to pursue that in a variety of ways, right? And those ways
Mm.
look different for everyone.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
So tell me, what have you noticed, in yourself and your clients during this
Mhm.
pandemic time, and then what's the first thing that you would say to someone
Mhm.
who's going through stress right now?
Yeah. Well, one is it's okay. Everyone
Mm.
is in stress, and when we're in that state for a prolonged period, it can be very hard to think long term or to think complex. And so the first thing that I do for myself, and also that I've been working with all my clients, is to have a routine to hold on to have something. I like to do a morning routine. And this can be very small. It doesn't have to be complicated, but to have something consistent as a grounding device, right? Here is where we are. I know I might not know a lot of things about my life right now, but at least I know that I'm going to get up and drink a glass of water, which is what I do first
Mhm.
thing in the morning. And then I stretch for 10 minutes. And those are things I feel like are in my control most of the time. And that sort of regularity is very anchoring, right? And
Mm.
I I could tell you a little more about what I do in the morning, but those two things, even as simple as they are, um, put me in my body immediately. Because one thing the stress response does, it immediately takes us out into our mind, into our fears, out of the body. So, I'm like drinking a glass of water slowly, the whole thing. So it's some time, and then I'm stretching, I'm feeling myself, my muscles, and my body. So I'm there, right on the earth.
Yeah.
Um, and then usually after that, I will either free write for 15, 20 minutes in a journal. And the free writing is just like a brain dump, right? Because during a more stressful time, there's a lot more like brain activity that isn't always
Mhm.
helpful. It's like, oh, what about this? What if this? What if that? Just like get it out, right? Externalize again, like with movement. So I do this with a pen and paper, not on the computer. So the physical movement is therapeutic, and it's just a cleansing
Mm.
kind of activity. And sometimes I do both, but sometimes um, instead of that, I'll do a 20-minute meditation.
Mm.
Usually just a simple breath-based meditation, like following the inhale and exhale. And even for me, that's physical. It's breath based. Sometimes I'm too restless, so the writing works better. Sometimes after I do the writing, then I can sit, and sometimes I just need to sit. So I improvise with it a little bit. Um, and then after that, I kind of get ready for my day. And the other thing that I do that is really important for me is that I make a to-do list, or I update my to-do list every day. So I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to do now. I don't have to waste time thinking about it or get lost, distracted by other things. I've kind of externalized the leader part of me, into, okay, I'm updating my to-do list for today, and I'm going to check my calendar. So I don't have to decide, right? Or less decisions are needed. And that kind of just keeps me in action and in, some sort of rhythm. Now, I think that might be more important for self-employed folks than if you have a job with other people. Your schedule might be more already decided by others, but that's what I do. And most of my clients, like, they have something like that helps ground them in the mornings. And even if you don't always do it, that's totally fine. We're not perfectionists. We're being kind and compassionate to ourselves, especially at this time. So that little routine can look a million different ways.
I love hearing about different morning routines. I've found that it's really so important. Even if you do have for me personally, like even when I did have a stable job, of course, like that was really helpful for me to have a solid structure that was given to me for my day, or like mostly given to me. And I found it a huge challenge going into entrepreneurship, not having that. And so the morning routine was so important. But the other way that it's important is that it's something you do for you, no matter what. Even if you're going into a job, you've done this thing for you first, and you're supporting and grounding yourself, centering yourself in yourself before you go out and give yourself to other people. And I just think that's so powerful. And I love how you started out with just two things, just so simple. You can do them anywhere, even if you're traveling. Drink water and stretch for you. Those are just two things that you started with. And then, yeah, it's that simplicity is really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes, whenever we think of self-care or, a routine or something, it can be a big deal.
Yeah,
And it
people are
can
like, I'm
be.
not going to have time for
Yeah,
3 hours of meditation in the morning.
Yeah, and it's great if you do 3 hours of meditation. I mean, awesome. But it doesn't have to be that, and I find, especially this year, right, the simpler, the better in many ways. And that can change, can always build. Um, but yeah. And that's what I'm noticing in conversation with people also, that just needed to really scale down, right, and get to like the essence of what can I really do that it's doable, and just this like the smallest version of whatever you might be called towards is enough.
Right. Yeah, especially to start with. If you don't have a morning routine, what's the easiest thing that would give you pleasure and take care of you, that you can start with, and then build from there?
Exactly.
Awesome. So the first tip is to have a routine. That's the first tip for staying centered.
Yeah. And I would suggest that it be a non-digital routine.
My routine is I check my emails.
Yeah, but that could be, I mean, it's not a hard, fast rule, right?
Yeah.
That's just me.
How do you, if somebody is new to this and they want to have a routine, how would you suggest that people test different things? Because one of the things that I love about you is your devotion. You said this that what is it? Discipline is devotion.
Yeah, that's from Amy Lombardo.
That's so
Discipline
wonderful.
as devotion. Yeah.
Discipline as devotion. And so if you're new and you want to experiment, how do you do that, but then have that discipline as devotion in your life?
Well, I would definitely say start small, as you're mentioning, right? Try something for maybe it's like 3 days, right? So one day won't really tell you if you know if it's the thing for you, but probably after 3 days, you'll feel like, okay, yeah, this is working. I'm feeling a shift, of some kind.
Mm.
Um, I'm feeling different, afterwards, and then you'll know you've found something. If it doesn't, then try something else. Um, yeah, I would also say think of maybe trying different categories of things. So if you have one like movement thing, like I have, the stretching, some people like to get up and do exercise in the morning, more athletic, or walk or run or something like that. So that's like one category of things. And then there's like the meditative internal category, which is like the free writing or the meditating in my case, or it could also be like watering the plants or putting the dishes away from the night before, or cleaning or tidying. I mean, it could be lots of whatever sort of simple, repetitive, and not like very physically taxing, right? That I would put into like a sort of meditative category.
Mhm.
So might try like different categories of things, and then
Mhm.
there's like um, the category of getting ready, like showering and dressing, and that itself can be like a ritual. Like I always do that first, or always do that second, so it has a place. Or the checking the email, right? The to-do list stuff, like that sort of businessy orientation. That's another category of stuff that you could put first, or you could put it third, or wherever you have it. I think there
Got
were
it.
four categories there, right?
I think so. So
Or
the
like,
athletic or stretching body movement,
yeah,
meditative,
meditative, getting ready,
getting ready.
hygiene, and then businessy, worky stuff.
Mhm.
There's more, but
Cool.
those are some to experiment with.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's thinking about it in categories, and you can play with the order, you can
Mhm.
play with the different things within each category. It's really very clear. All right, so what's the second tip?
The second tip is a little bit like the other side of grounding, right? It's like you're grounded, it's something very known and familiar. And the other side is like the creative right brain side. So for me, I've always found creative practice to be very anti stressing, whether it's dance or painting or writing or, baking. I mean, the creativity I define very, very broadly, car repair, um, toothpaste formulation. I mean, anything, right? Whatever for you feels creative, right, is the thing. And so what I do right now is I paint and draw. That's my creative practice. And so I try to work in some of that time, maybe like 1 to 2 hours, like 2 to 3 days a week. And usually I do it like in the late afternoon. That's like when I've done most of my work. And I can just sort of shut off that left analytical brain and go into the imagination, the right brain. Um, and so where the routine is kind of grounding and like anchoring, this is a sort of inspiring and expanding. Um,
Mm.
and it allows it's stimulating the imagination, it's stimulating the um, love of beauty, the literal like agency that we have to make things. That's very empowering. That I spent an hour with these materials, and then at the end of it something was different, right? Like I did that. So whether it's gardening or painting or whatever, like there's this inherent experience of, oh, I had an impact, right? I did something, and the process of doing that is very healing, I think, and strengthening. So that's my other kind of big tip, and again, very wide open there. For me, creativity can be anything, but the key is that it feels to you expansive and discovery based, and whereas the routine is something is the same all the time. This is like something that's never the same, but
Mm.
in a good way, not in like an uncertain way, but in a like discovery exploration way.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that puts you into that realm of possibility.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I'm getting the image of a
Mhm,
tree as you're
mhm,
talking because you're the grounding
mhm,
routine is the roots, and then
mhm,
you have this space to expand and explore and grow
mhm,
and see possibilities. I love that, as you're thinking about what creative practice to do, maybe if you're watching and you don't have a clear creative practice that you're really dedicated to, if you're
mhm,
choosing one, it should feel possibility opening, expanding.
mhm,
And another thing that I want to make sure to highlight, something you said before in our previous conversation, was that the moment it starts to feel like work
mhm,
or feel like something you have to accomplish,
mhm.
is that's not what you're going for, right? You're going for a sense of play, a sense of openness, a sense of freedom with that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, very key in this experience. And again, particularly because of this year that's so stressful and so much about like um, worry, right? Um, Playfulness is scarce. It feels scarce. At least it had to me. And I know I ramped up my creative practice because I was feeling like, man, I really need this in my life because it's feeling scarce. So as you said, as soon as it becomes like work, it sort of loses its magic.
Yeah.
I know that when I start to even think, okay, this painting, I'm going to finish it today and I'm going to like put it up on the website, then it all goes wrong, right? It immediately goes wrong. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. So I have to, and I hate it. It's not fun, right? I don't like what I'm drawing. And so I have to just put that one aside, maybe come back the next day or just start a new page with no attachment at all to the outcome. And
No
that's,
attention to the outcome.
yeah, no attachment to the outcome. And that is the spirit of exploration and play. I think that you're just doing things because you're curious to see what will happen. You know, I mean, in some cases, baking, for example, it's not just a total free for all, right? You would have some sort of guidelines on that.
Right.
Um, but it's still, like maybe it's a new recipe, or maybe you're like, oh, I'll try this kind of sugar instead of that one. So there is still the spirit of like play and wanting to see what happens. And I
Mhm.
think that that is so valuable, like in a stressful situation where you're terrified of what's going to happen, right? But to be able to put yourself in that place of possibility and curiosity and openness and wanting to discover, there's a lot of power there, right? And that same kind of thinking is what powers our ability to think of what my next career might be. What kind of like house do I want to live in? What do I want in my relationship? Really, it's that ability to imagine and to be curious and to trust that something will happen from your action. So the creative
Mm.
practice is like training for anything else you want to create in your life, in my mind.
Wow, that is so powerfully said. So powerfully said. I never thought about it that way. That something so simple as being playful and painting,
Mhm.
or being playful for me, it's dance, it's movement, it's like free movement. I just get on
Mhm.
my rug on the floor and just
Yeah.
roll around and act like an animal. And
Love it. Love it.
and but that sense is, it's like you're practicing a way of being
Mhm.
that empowers you in other creative areas of your life where you do care about the outcome.
Mhm. Yes, very much so. Like you're building that muscle. Um, and you'll know you're doing it if you feel playful. Like if you feel curious, if you feel excited to do the thing and discover something. And if you don't feel that way, then it's not the right practice for you.
Yeah, so talk more
Mhm.
about that. If you don't feel that way,
Mhm.
then what would you suggest people do?
Uh, Mostly just try different things, right? Maybe um, learn what other people are doing, or uh, kind of go into research mode for a little while. Like, oh, what are other things people do that put them in this spirit of like playfulness or discovery or curiosity, and then try them. Much like we discussed with the routine, try something for a little while. I mean, when I started drawing, I was not thinking to myself, now I will do this for the rest of my life, right? in a coach session that I was doing, like kind of training one with a colleague. And there was a sort of line of questions around like, what would you do if you couldn't fail? Or what have you always wanted to try? What are you putting off? These sorts of imagination and boosting questions. And one thing that came up was like, just want to, play with crayons, I want to draw and I'm afraid of it because I'm not going to be good enough, And so the challenge that my colleague gave me was like, what's the least amount of money you could spend to just make this happen? Right. Just for 1 hour.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and spend like $500 on like big stuff. Just, what could you do? So I spent $10. That's what I said I was willing to spend at the time. I bought, a pad of drawing paper and a set of oil pastels. These sort of like waxy crayons that are really vibrant in color. That was what I was interested in. So I spent $10 and that was like 6 months of joy for me.
Wow.
And all I did was every day I would like, my assignment to myself was to cover the white space with colors. That's it.
Wow.
And that was my creative practice. And so and it grew, right? Then it became other things. I wanted to try different materials, right? I wanted to try certain techniques. I took a class, but it didn't start that way. So I could have just started that and it could have lasted just a week and then I was done, right? But it just happened to be that it became more important to me. So that's, I guess, maybe one good question to ask. Just find out what some other people are doing, right? Choose something that seems interesting or that you're curious about. No commitment. What's the least amount of money you can spend to make it happen? And it might be zero. Maybe you don't need any money. And just do it for a week. Or do it like, if you can't do it every day for a week, then maybe do it like 3 or 4 times over a short period of time. So you over 3 or 4 times over 2 weeks, say. So you have a little bit of momentum with it and you start to feel like, is this something that's giving you that feeling of play and fun and curiosity and exploration?
So beautiful. And we have a surprise. We have Greg.
Greg!
Yay! So Greg, you made it.
We're having a few technology issues here today.
Yeah, I had some technology issues on my side too. So we're glad you're here, Greg. I think you probably caught the last part of what we were saying. We're talking about the creative practice. So that's the second tip, is being creative and finding a practice that you can be devoted to, but you're really devoted to the sense of playfulness and expansiveness and openness and freedom, and not devoted to any specific outcome for the practice itself. Is that right, Sharna?
Yes.
And it's really inspiring.
Hard to do.
But it's actually so simple. And it's really inspiring me because I have many creative practices, but I'm realizing that many of them also have an outcome. Like my singing, I'm pretty attached to how I sound. My writing, I'm pretty attached to what I'm going to post. Even my dancing now, my tango dancing now has gotten less outcome oriented, which feels so much better. Is there anything quickly that you can speak into about that? If you have a creative practice and it's not that feeling of expansiveness, you still enjoy it, but it's not that same creative feeling, would you recommend really trying something totally new, or would you recommend trying to cultivate that sense of openness within a creative practice that you already have?
That's a great question. I mean, I think both are definitely possible. I could say I also am more attached to my writing now because I've spent like so many years with it. It feels more like some kind of hybrid creative work thing in my life. So maybe that's the best example I can take. So with writing, right, it is something that I feel like I do want to have a particular outcome with it, whether it's like a blog post or book or whatever. But there's part of that process that needs to remain free and open for me. So it's usually at the beginning, but sometimes in the middle, right, during revising, but say at the beginning, right, I'm not a writer who will make a strict outline and then follow it, and then like have the whole thing known from beginning to end. The way that I write is more like, here's the general idea I'm interested in. I'm going to just start writing without thinking. That's my kind of open-ended part of the process. And that happens for a length of time, right? Depending on what the project is. So I have a little bit of that built in where I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm totally willing to throw it all away if it doesn't come out, the way that I want, and do it over. And then after that, there's this phase where I choose, right? It's like, and this, I think this feels very similar to choreography for me, where you generate a bunch of movement and then you go into a phase where you're selecting, right? And choosing, okay, from that initial exploration, I'm going to choose some parts to develop more. And there it becomes more intentional and outcome based. But still at some point it might be like, this section isn't working. Let me go back to the free open phase with that one section and see if I can generate some more things. And then kind of go back, through the selecting process. That's how I experience it in writing within that larger, like more outcome-based frame. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where you are in the process, and you're clear about this part is where I'm feeling free and open, and this part is where I'm choosing. You use very intentional words, I notice, because it's important, your frame of mind, about the whole process, and you're choosing very empowering words for the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, but maybe, that's just one example. I wanted to have another practice, right, that was really free. And that's why I chose drawing, because it was new for me. Usually things that are new are freer, right, because we have less investment in them. So, yeah.
Amazing. I have one more question related to this. And this is something that often comes up in our conversations, Greg, with spirit drivers. And that is about the influence of technology and of Netflix, or the pull of social media. So I'm imagining, as somebody is getting inspired to take on a creative practice and wants to feel that sense of freedom and expansiveness. And then at the end of the day, you finish work and you're like, man, all I want to do is watch Netflix. Or all I want to do is scroll on my phone. What would you say to that person?
I think I would ask, how does the Netflix or scrolling making you feel? No one is immune to that stuff, right? Like me, for sure, not me. I use it like everyone else. Is it making you feel relaxed and good? Then great, right? My experience with social media is that and Netflix and the like these sorts of things. And I've had several client conversations about this as well, that there is sort of a point at which they start to feel not completely good. Right. That there is an element of, yes, that it's relaxing. I just check out, watch. I need to distract myself, for a while. I'm just going to watch a program or scroll Twitter or whatever. But there's sort of a point of, like, it sort of accumulates over time where it starts to feel heavier, or just not as nurturing. And I noticed that with myself. I sort of go in waves with it. And so I try my best to monitor that. And if I'm starting to feel that sort of negative side of the screen, then I limit my time, and I literally schedule my painting time, or my writing time, or whatever it is. Another thing that I do is the time of day that I would do things like that, like scrolling on the phone or watching Netflix, it would be in the evening, would be after 5 usually, or later. Whereas the time of day that I would potentially schedule a creative activity is earlier than that. So in terms of time, they're not in conflict.
I see. Okay.
But I can do that because I'm self-employed. You might have more limited time because if you work a regular hour job, and so that scheduling might be a little trickier.
I see.
So I would ask first, really, what's, go with your body sensation? Like, what is that really doing for you? And that's the first guide, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely a limit, and you just said it so well. I find that with myself, it can be kind of a number. It can be relaxing, or it can be kind of numbing. And when I find that it's starting to be numbing, I start to say, okay, how can I be more present? How can I use this time in a more nurturing way? I thought you said that really well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like a certain threshold. I feel it physically. There's sort of a threshold of where it crosses into that numbing area. And that's kind of like signal for me that it's probably like there's like too much level, like the level of that is too high in my body, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's a consumption. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And creative practice is the opposite. It's creating, it's putting things out.
Oh, wow. That distinction is really powerful for me. Greg?
Another distinction that I make with all of this is that it can be entertainment or it can be lifestyle. And I'm trying to push back on the lifestyle part of it, because I don't need to be completely connected to any social media outlet all the time. But if I want to go scroll through Instagram, or I want to go scroll through Facebook, well, that's entertainment. But I've finally figured out how to make that distinction. And turn off all the notifications too. That's the other thing, because I don't need some little machine beeping at me all day long. It was infuriating at one point, until I figured out that was my choice, and my choice was to get rid of the little noises.
Yeah,
and it's a lot better now.
Yeah, well said. It's all about intentionality.
Right?
It's all about noticing and making a clear choice, a response.
Yeah,
according to your vision.
Yeah, I would also just note, I think it's worth noting that those technologies are addictive. Like, it's not even the same as making a choice of, eating carrots for dinner or like lasagna. It's like, this thing does have an outsized influence on your brain. And it's good to know that, right? So when you're interacting with them, there's a reason it's hard to resist them. There's a reason you start to feel that numbing. So just to really be aware of that.
There's a reason the next Netflix show starts 5 seconds later.
Yes, exactly.
Oh man. Well, yeah, we always end up talking about this. I think it's just more important than ever. So thank you for your input on that, Sharna. And now I want to take a little break and have you offer your gift to our audience. And this is something that I have been so enjoying. So I'm really excited for you to offer it.
Great. Well, this gift that I chose was created really for the pandemic. So I think it's the most appropriate thing to choose. It came out of, again, my observation that we desperately need very small, bite-sized ways to bring ourselves back into the body and keep ourselves connected to our creative power. And so the form that took is called the Lotus Journal. And the journal is digital. It's an email subscription. You get one email a week for a year, 52 weeks. And each one is 3 parts. There's a piece of artwork, which is the collection that I've been painting this year, kind of inspired by this time of confinement. And the lotus is a symbol of rising and transcending darkness. So for me, it's very prescient. And so the email has a piece of that artwork. Then it has one question to journal about, or just to ask yourself, like, what do I need today? What do I want to say no to today? What am I dreaming about today? Things like that. And then the final third piece is a short creative practice that you can do in 10 minutes. So you can draw with your eyes closed, or make a mandala, or it's actually, some of them are healing practices. So there's like a short meditation that you could do. There are some physical practices, some simple stretching. So those activities, again, they're short. They're in the category of creativity, healing, self-care, and that's the 3-part journal.
So beautiful. And I've shared that in the comments below, and we will make sure that you have access to that. as a viewer and as a part of our community. So thank you so much, Sharna, for offering that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and also highly recommend that you check out Sharna's website at www.sharnafabiano.com because her work is beautiful. She has an amazing blog with tons of resources for, I mean, across a huge variety of topics. But what I find is that when I read your posts, I feel a sense of groundedness. It's your groundedness and your centeredness that you practice in your life comes through in your writing. And it is combined with that sense of expansiveness and creativity, and it's so authentic to you. And it's just, you know, you weave the dance and all of your different practices together in such a beautiful way. So highly recommend that you just visit Sharna at her website.
Thank you so much, Elise. It's very heartwarming to hear that.
Well, it's true from my heart for sure. And now, you know, also we want to talk about spirit drivers and just let you know that Greg and we are accepting applications for our very first mastermind right now. We're going to be starting in January. And it's a group of powerful people coming together to uplift each other. And if you are interested in being intentional with your life and your vision, taking this time of uncertainty as an opportunity to grow and lead your life in a powerful direction according to you and your vision and not according to the chaos out in the world, then Spirit Drivers might be a fit for you. So you can visit our site at spiritdrivers.com and apply there at the bottom of the site, and you'll schedule a time to talk to me or Greg, or actually both of us, we're both on those calls, and meet us personally, and we'll talk about your goals and see if it's a fit for you. So we would love to have you apply.
We would really love to have you apply. It's just the application process is interesting, as well as allowing us to get into real detail about the purpose of the mastermind and how it works and what people are getting out of it. It will be a good journey for you, we believe.
Yes, yes, we do. And now, without further ado, your bonus tip. So we promised 2 centering tips, and we've covered those 2. The first one was having a routine in the morning, or a routine in your life to ground you, and something that you know is for you, is nurturing for you. And it's the same every day. You don't have to decide. And then the second thing is that sense of creativity, having a creative practice that makes you feel expansive and free and unattached to the outcome and expressive of yourself. And now, what's the third tip, Sharna?
Well, the third tip, I might be a little surprising, but the third tip is also something that I have observed in myself this year that has just kind of flared into focus. I wasn't aware of it before as a anti-stress or as a nurturing practice, but really became clear to me just the past 6-8 months. And it is gifting. And when I say the word gifting or giving, I mean it very expansively. Could be like a material gift. I have received beautiful gifts this year in the form of handmade cookies, in the form of artwork from friends, but also in the form of time, and help. I think volunteer work is also like a form of giving. And the reason I have found this so valuable is that it naturally builds a sense of belonging and connection and community. And that is one of the biggest things that was attacked this year by this pandemic and being so isolated, that I think so many of us felt like alone and disconnected, right? And so giving is like the opposite of trade, right? If you think of business and selling and buying, that's kind of about transactions, which sort of divide communities one from the other. But giving is the opposite. It reaffirms an insider group, a sense of community, a sense of shared investment in one another's lives. And so whether you're giving like in your family or your household or in your community, like in terms of volunteering, I think that act of thinking of the other person and also receiving, right, of course, it just has this beautiful like connective it builds this like connective tissue in the social structure that is really important for our well-being.
Well, isn't that fabulous advice? As I hear you offer that, Sharna, it makes me think, wow, just offering someone a gift, right? All of a sudden now I'm reconnected with that person, right? Doesn't have to even be more than cookies, right? Or a bottle of wine, or even, a small gift.
Or a puzzle.
Or a puzzle.
Greg sent me a puzzle, and it was such an amazing gift. It was such an amazing gift. And it was such a delightful surprise that he's gifted me actually a puzzle and a book from across the ocean. And you don't often receive something in the mail from someone,
Right.
So it's really a special thing.
It's quite a delight when it happens, isn't it?
And it's a delight. Yeah.
It's a delight. Yeah. So this gifting thing, though, that's easy to do. And that's really a step back into normal, isn't it, Sharna? That's just a fabulous advice.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels that way to me. It's like, yes, it's very affirming, right? Yes, we are together. We are moving forward. We are part of each other's lives. Here's the evidence in this home-baked piece of bread or whatever it is. It's been so moving to me. Like, I was not prepared for how delightful and how emotional those experiences were, both giving and receiving gifts. It just really stood out to me when you asked what would be a third thing.
We actually, just a really short story, we have some neighbors here who are wonderful Swiss neighbors, and they have always greeted us and said hello from the balcony and everything. And we were greeting them one day and said, "Oh, it's Marco's birthday today." And the woman came over and knocked on our door at about 10 p.m. with a fresh home-baked cheesecake.
Wow.
For Marco's birthday, the same day that we had told her that. And it had been actually a really hard day, unfortunately. So it was an incredible upliftment. It was an incredible act of love and act of neighborship. That just brought us so much joy, and I'll never forget it. And the cake was so delicious.
Yeah. And to your point, I think those acts, like, they do something. It's not just in the moment. It's like they last. Like, the effect is sort of, now there's something between you. This sort of invisible thread, exists between you, which I just find that remarkable and kind of a beautiful, observation of humanity.
Yeah. I love how you said gifts can be the connective tissue that really bond us together. And I absolutely see that. And that's also another thing that we're so passionate about as spirit drivers, is seeing and nurturing the best in humanity. Because fear and uncertainty and stress tend to bring out our worst traits. And what we're about is intentionally nurturing those really positive parts of the human experience.
Yeah, so important. They need to be nurtured.
Yeah.
I think we've invented a new word here. It's called reconnective tissue.
Nice. Greg, I love that.
Pandemic.
I love that.
Right. It's reconnective tissue, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love this.
Reconnective tissue. Yes.
Love it.
Well, that about wraps us up for today. So, Sharna, thank you again. And I'll just encourage everyone one more time to download the Lotus Journal, to go to and visit Sharna at her website, and also to visit us at Spirit Drivers and apply to join if it feels like a fit for you. And Sharna, it's always such a special experience connecting with you. Thank you for all your wisdom.
Thank you.
Thank you. You were a great gift to us today. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Well, thanks for everyone for watching, and we will see you next week, where we're going to bring on another amazing guest to the podcast, and we'll see you there. See you next Tuesday. Bye.
Bye-bye.